Good morning, everybody. Justin Dunaway here with the Institute of Clinical Excellence. For those of you who don't know, that I am lead faculty. I teach the total spine thrust manipulation seminars and the persistent pain management seminars. So if you're interested, please check those out on our website, www.ptonice.com. So today I want to talk about a new study that I stumbled on last week. Really interesting stuff, but it's the effect of early surgery versus physical therapy on knee function among patients with non-obstructive meniscal tears, from Graf et al. And it's a really interesting study that took a whole bunch of patients, over 300, that had non-obstructive meniscal tears. So they had no knee locking, they had knee pain and dysfunction. Randomized them into two groups. You either got surgery and an HEP, but no PT, or you got 16 30-minute sessions of what was called physical therapy that was designed by a physical therapist knee specialist. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But basically, this is a non-inferiority study. So the goal is to put these two interventions head-to-head and just see which, if physical therapy was better than, equal to, or worse than surgery. For this stuff. And we know there's a lot of information out there about this, but we still see a lot of meniscal surgeries being done for some of these non-obstructive cases. So they wanted to dive into this a little bit further. So over 300 patients either got surgery or physical therapy, and they checked in on them at 3, 6, 12, and 24 months. And the main outcome was looking at knee function. And what they found is that when you compare early surgery versus PT head-to-head across all these time points, physical therapy wasn't any worse than surgery. And that doesn't sound like an exciting thing, but it is, right? Because if we look at the costs of surgery, the risks of surgery, the downstream effects of surgery and medications and those things, there's some inherent risk and societal cost with those that are just much less in physical therapy. So if we can show that physical therapy has the potential to at least be as good as this other alternative from a risk-benefit ratio, throwing PT at patients with these things first before early surgery seems to be more important. But we've got to dive in here a little bit deeper. So, like I said, the outcomes were function. But what's interesting is that like most studies, you could cross over to the other group, right? So if you were in the PT group and you failed PT, you could cross into the surgery group. And what was defined as a failure in PT was persistent knee pain, limitations in daily activities, or if locking occurred. That third one makes sense to me. But you could, if you were a couple sessions deep in physical therapy and still had knee pain, you could say, I'm jumping in the surgery group. So what they found in this study was there was a huge crossover. 47 patients in the physical therapy group jumped ship into the surgery group. So on the front end of this looks like a big win for physical therapy, but when we dive into the numbers a little bit, we see massive amounts of people jumping physical therapy ship and getting into surgery. So we have to explore that a little bit. But they had 47 people jump ship into the surgery group, a handful of them pretty early, but 35 of them had surgery within 6 months of the study. So they pulled that group out and made it a second group. So now you had early surgery, you had delayed surgery, and then you had physical therapy. And what they found is that the surgery group and the physical therapy group, about the same, but the physical therapy group outperformed the delayed surgery group. So if you got the surgery later, like if you started PT and it's like, this isn't for me, and then got the surgery, you didn't do as well as if you would have just stuck out the PT or had the surgery on the front end. And then another 17 people didn't complete the actual physical therapy protocol. So in all, we had 64 patients that even though they were either as good or better off in physical therapy, dropped out at some point. So we have to understand why we're losing these patients, because what the study shows us is that physical therapy is just as effective as surgery and is probably better than delayed surgery. But if we just tell that to our patients, it doesn't seem to be enough. Because like in this study, 64 people left. So we got to figure out why. One of the first things that jump out at me is that physical therapy protocol is a little bit funky. First off, and I think this is a problem with research, and you can, if you follow David Poulter on Twitter, he's talking about this a lot too. But when we study physical therapy in in research, we're not actually studying physical therapy. We're studying an intervention. We're studying a set of standardized prescriptive exercises. That's not physical therapy. I'm not going to see 130 knee pain patients and all of them are going to get the same 15 exercises over 30 minutes 16 times. Like, that's just not what physical therapy is. So a better title for this study would be a prescriptive exercise program versus surgery for meniscal tears, not necessarily PT. But that's another conversation for another day. The protocol seemed to focus a lot on balance and hip and calf work, and there was some quad and hamstring in there, but there wasn't. It didn't seem to me like the loading of that area was enough. But again, everybody's going to do exercise different. There was this focus on core strength and the importance of posture, and then they had an HEP that they did single leg balance and step downs 2 times a week. And that was the program. But what you didn't see in the program that I think is important and probably leads to why we saw such a huge crossover is the sessions didn't focus on function at all. They just focused on these 15 exercises. And function was the main outcome measure, but not only the main outcome measure, was a marker of failure. If patients weren't showing improvements in functions with these 15 exercises, they got surgery. But the exercises weren't functional. They were just rote general isolated strengthening stuff. So what we see in the long run is that the PT was non-inferior to surgery and better than delayed surgery. But we had this huge loss. 47 people crossed over. 17 additional people didn't finish physical therapy. So we've got to figure out why physical therapy really failed. And this is what I think here. Here's where PT failed. It wasn't the patient's pain, and it wasn't the lack of improvement in function. It was a focus on pain in not designing a treatment around individuals' functional goals. We know from some other studies that look at surgery for things, like the 2 Dune and Kun studies, which I did a PT on ice about a while back, the shoulder surgery for chronic full-thickness non-traumatic rotator cuff tears, that these patients with full-thickness rotator cuff tears, 75% of them did fantastic with conservative management. 25% needed surgery. And when we look at why the one largest predictor of why they needed surgery was a belief that conservative management wasn't going to help them. Right? So what that tells me right off the bat is that if these patients walked in the door, these are our patients to lose. So we need to, I think the fault in this study was the inability of physical therapy for these 60-some patients, for these 64 patients, was an inability to show the patient positive progress. We have to be able to demonstrate to the patient that what we're doing is effective, or they're going to jump to the next thing. They need to be able to see some sort of change relatively quickly, or they're going to be looking for the next magic bullet. And this is on us. We have to be able to demonstrate change within session and between sessions, or we're going to lose the patients to the surgery, even though we know that this is at least just as effective. So how do we do that? One of the things I love is really trying to get the patients early on to focus on function versus pain. And I know that sounds simplistic, and I stole this graph from Louis Gifford's Aches and Pains. Throw that up there, give him some credit. But early on, I pull out the whiteboard and I show this to the patients. This top line is pain, this bottom line is function. And there's a good 15-minute explanation, but basically it's the first thing you got to realize is that it's not a straight shot to the finish line. It's up and down. You're going to have good days and you have bad days. There's going to be days that you feel like you can do more. There's going to be days that you feel like you can do less. That's been the progress of this thing since the beginning, and it's been independent of what's been going on. So just realize that it's going to be a little bit wavy to the end. Everybody up to this point has focused on that top line. Every treatment you've had is focused on pain. We're going to be a little bit different here. We're going to focus on this bottom line. We're going to be respectful of your pain, but we're going to focus on that function. And as we drive your function forward, as we really dial in on the things that are important to you, and get you doing more of those things, what you're going to find is that over time, your pain's going to come down with it. As we slowly and progressively drive function forward, your overall picture of you is going to get better. So right off the bat, we have to focus on patient's function. Now, from there, what's really, really important is that we have to, and this is where the asterisk signs come in. If you guys are familiar with the Maitland model, what we need to do is have really solid objective and subjective asterisk signs. And our objective asterisk signs are just simply things that we can observe in the clinic and see change as we apply a treatment. As we put our hands on patients, as we do some exercises, we have to have measures that we can show patients things are changing if they're going to buy into the stuff we're doing in the clinic. The subjective asterisk signs are going to be the things that relate to the patient's life, their goals. They're the things that I want to be able to walk my dog, and I haven't been able to walk more than a block without pain. I want to be able to pick my grandkid up off the floor. I want to be able to work in the shed for more than 15 minutes. Whatever their goal is, we have to figure out a timeline or a load and slowly progress that over time. And our in-session exercises in our HEP have to be designed to move the needles on those subjective asterisk signs so that 2 weeks down the road, we can sit down with John and say, hey, John, I know you think you're having a bad day, but look at this. When we started this thing, you could only walk your dog to the mailbox and back, and now you're walking a mile every day. Right? We're moving in the right direction. We have to show you that your objectives, your functional goals are changing. If my main outcome measure is function and nothing in my program addresses your function, your status, nothing in my program trains you to do better at the things that you want to do, of course you're going to be looking for something else. So it's wildly important that we dial in our subjective and objective asterisk signs, that we are able to not only demonstrate change in the clinic every session, but demonstrate change outside of the clinic consistently. If we want our patients to buy in, if we want our patients to finish the program, if we want our patients to realize that they don't need the surgery, if we want them to realize that the only magic bullet lives inside them, this is how we do it. So we're going to dial in these subjective and objective asterisk signs. So the take-home measures here, guys, is and we know this. Our patients can't rush into surgery. If they show up in our clinic first, these are our patients to lose, right? If they walk in our door, it is our duty to demonstrate change, to get them to buy into the program, to get them to understand that they don't need the surgery, that the conservative management is the way forward for them. They're going to be fine. It's going to be a little bit of a road. It took them some time to get into this position. It's going to take them some time to get out of it, but they've got to put the work in. There is value in symptom modification. Most of these patients dropped out early because they had knee pain. So if we can spend 10, 15 minutes on the front end of the session doing some stuff, and whatever that stuff is, if we can do some stuff to change their pain a little bit, to get them to buy into the program so we can go out in the gym and do some functional stuff, there's value in that. And I know there's a lot of back and forth on manual therapy and pain and blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling you guys, it doesn't matter. If we want the patients to not jump ship and go somewhere else, we have to be able to demonstrate some change. And there's some value in being able to transiently modify symptoms in the short term to get them to buy into the program long term. Got to have solid objective and subjective asterisk signs. And as we move the needle, we have to be constantly checking in and celebrating these successes with the patients so that they see the change. These these asterisk signs are more for them than they are for us. As we demonstrate changes, we get them to see that they have the potential to improve with this, then they have hope. And when they have a hope, your outcomes improve drastically. All right, we have to focus on pain versus function, and not just by telling them, but really demonstrating that, really getting the patient to buy into the fact that pain and damage are not the same thing. And as we focus on function, as we drive function forward, that's where these changes come from. Lastly, we have to remember that our job isn't just to tell them that they don't need surgery. Education is important. Education, getting the patient to understand pain and damage and function and all that, and really that they're going to do just as well in therapy as they are in surgery is important. We have to educate our patients on that. But you're not going to talk somebody out of surgery by handing them an RCT that has 400 people in it that says, these things are non-inferior, right? Patients don't know what that means. Patients don't care what that means. Educating the patients on the value of conservative management is important, but really where the magic lives is demonstration, by showing them the change in the needles, by pushing forward the subjective and objective asterisk signs, by developing a program based on the functional goals of your patient, and then consistently driving that function forward. That is where the patients are really going to buy into the program and really going to say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna we're gonna put the surgery on hold. Let's get through this program and see how things are going. And at the end of the 6 weeks, if they're back to walking, if they're back to jogging, if they're back to going up and down the stairs, doing whatever it was that they were doing before the injury, they're not gonna want the surgery 6 months down the road. All right. So, long story short, as we're in the clinics, we have to think not just about the encounter in front of us, not just about this one singular session, but we have to think about the downstream effects of what we do, what we say in the education. If the patients walk in the door, these are our patients to lose. We have to do everything in our power to demonstrate change, not just in the clinic, but between sessions. And our program has to focus on the patient's functional goals. Step-ups and lunges and squats and deadlifts and all those things are cool and they're awesome. And I do them in the clinic every day with my patients. But we've got to be able to tie them into the things that they're trying to get back to. Okay, focus on function. Pain isn't damage. Demonstrate change. Really dial in on those objective asterisk signs. And this week when you're in the clinic, as you're talking to your patients, really make sure that when the patients walk in the door, you've got the subjective and objective asterisk signs that you're going to dial in on those days in the chamber, ready to rock. Ask those patients the questions. Follow those needles and celebrate those successes as those things change, and patients won't be dropping out for surgery. Cool. Well, thanks for listening. I will post this article in the thread underneath the feed here. And also I've got, we are headed out to Haiti Morgan and I are headed out to Haiti with Stay in the Haiti Project. If you guys are interested in what that's all about, check us out on the Facebook page, but we are leaving for Haiti on Friday. Wish us luck. And if you're interested, stay tuned on the Facebook page. And you've got one last chance to catch the Total Spine Thrust Manipulation course in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, December 15th and 16th. And if you're interested in how the Institute of Clinical Excellence thinks about the management of persistent pain, please check out our 8-week online persistent pain course. Next cohort starts February 18th. As always, if there's any questions, leave them in the post, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.